Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Zalin. How's it going, man?
Ben, it was a glorious weekend. I did so much debauchery. I didn't worry about track. I took a day off. We didn't post content for a day. It was glorious. Yeah, man, this is the life. Why does everyone decide to run fast every other point of the season?
Everybody just needs to do it all in one weekend. It just like consolidate it, and then do that every 3 weeks, and then in between we could just have these nice little lulls.
I'm excited for the spring though. The spring it's like I've said before, so much more manageable. I think
Yes.
the meets themselves, the actual meets themselves, I think are more fun, depending on what we're talking about. But we're already going through our scheduling. We're already figuring out where we're going to go. We've got Raleigh on deck. We've got the 10 on deck. We've got Stanford Invite on deck. Those are coming the next 2 weeks here. So,
Oh man.
yeah, yeah, excited for it though. I think we got some good content on the way. We're gonna have freelancers in some capacity out there at those meets. Also happy about the one extra rating and review we got. One on Spotify, nothing on Apple. Guys, do us a favor, rating and review. Go to the episode, go to the page, scroll down, 5 stars. Love you lots. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ben. Oh, sorry. Did you want to note? Did you have
No,
something?
I was just gonna say that we know there's more of you out there listening
There
than
are.
there are of than there are reviews. So we know you are out there talking to you who has not reviewed but is currently listening.
Yeah, Mom. I know you're listening. I don't even know if she listens, honestly. So, anyways, off of that note, we got two things to talk about today. The big thing is end of season awards, a classic. People like
Yep.
it. It's fun. It's different. Try that out. So we'll talk about that today. We do have a little bit more serious note to talk about, however. All right, no, our connections are still good. You got me, Ben. We're all still set.
Yep. So I'll roll right through it.
Okay, we'll roll right through it. Um, One little piece of a more serious note, it was recently reported by Jonathan Galt of Let's Run last week, I believe, that TCU's Tabitha Ngao has been provisionally suspended, or at least has been over the last few weeks provisionally suspended by the anti-doping agency of Kenya for what is deemed to be a whereabouts failure. According to the report from Galt, Ngao is familiar that she is provisionally suspended and that she's currently appealing it. Galt reached out to TCU. I reached out to TCU. Did not hear any comment back. I can tell you from our own reporting, we did find this out at Big 12 championships at the prelims, where before Ngao ran the 1,000 meters. I can tell you that a coach reached out to me saying, "Hey, this is happening before she even ran the finals." They said other coaches are familiar. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but based on another source at the Big 12 championships that we had, sounds like some people were familiar. Ngao does go on to win the 1,000 meters. Again, I would want to clarify, it's important to note that she's provisionally suspended. And it's also important to note that it's a whereabouts failure. First thoughts on this whole situation?
In an age, it's 2025. It seems so strange to me that there's like this lack of information that like the anti-doping agency in Kenya, like that this just isn't more readily available. And like I know that, hey, NCAA system, it's not like they're competing at the Olympics or like this is a different level of quality of competition than I'm sure what the doping agency in Kenya is normally dealing with, right? They're dealing with their athletes running in Diamond League races, they're in World Championships and Olympics. But it's just stunning to me, and now this is kind of the second instance of something happening like this with Caroline Jeptanui of Tulane, that it just is so surprising to me that this is happening in 2025, that there just can't be a better flow of information. Now, why it is happening in 2025 is that there is a higher level of athletes who are actually being tested because they're running so fast in the NCAA. Like before, NCAA athletes were rarely running at the level that like their country's doping agency would be testing them. So it makes sense from that aspect that we're seeing more of these. And again, this wasn't a positive test, but a whereabouts failure, like that we are seeing some of these things. But I just keep coming back to the fact that how does this not get communicated at the NCAA level to the program level? Like, and if it was, again, no, nothing if it was or not. All indications that it wasn't. But if TCU was aware about it, then that makes it all the much worse. And again, I have no reason to believe that they did. But like, it's mind-boggling that this could not have been communicated in a better way.
Yeah, and so for those, by the way, need a little bit more context. Tabitha Ngao has run 2:01 for 800 meters. She was the 1,000 meter Big 12 champion this past winter. She qualified for the indoor national meet over 800 meters, was a scratch, likely for all good reasons, and to believe that it was because of this provisional suspension that had recently been found out. In her place, Smila Colby of North Florida was selected. She got into the national meet and therefore earned an All-American honor, actually a first-team All-American honor, 5th place. So the challenge that I get behind is this. We were given some kind of document, and I couldn't verify where it came from. I couldn't find the direct source. And on that had a list of what appeared to be ADAK provisionally suspended athletes. Caroline Jeptani was on there. And then, of course, Tabitha Ngao's name was on there. We had some kind of document that I got from a coach, and I tried to find the source, the direct source, and I could not. It was not on ADAK's website, which aligns with the Galt's reporting of, hey, none of these athletes were listed on their site, right? Which makes it challenging. It also makes me wonder, well, where did that list come from? And therefore,
that's my thing. Why is this so hard?
Right. Why is it hard, right? And so why was this there? But more importantly, if that coach knew and another source knew and the other source knew that other coaches knew in the Big 12, if this was ever in question, then why did she run the Big 12 1,000 meter final, right? And okay, fine, maybe I don't even know, right? Because then you'd be like, okay, well, if they weren't concerned about it, then they would have just let her run at the national meet, right? But they didn't. And so again, I don't want to put words or make or make suggestions that are inappropriate, but it's a whereabouts failure. This had been known to a handful of individuals in the running community. I can tell you that at least that something regarding her status was unclear at some point in the postseason. And it's a little odd to figure out the background. Now, I agree with you. I think there's some kind of background or caveat or maybe some kind of pending thing that we weren't aware of, which explains why she raced at Big 12s. Who knows? Very odd, very frustrating, disappointing. But at the same time, if I'm ADAK, I don't owe the responsibility of finding this out for anyone. Like, it's not like the NCAA is paying us. It's not like,
No.
all these schools or like these agencies are paying us. It's like if I'm ADAK, I'm like, okay, sure, but not our problem, basically.
I mean, the only thing that only bone I'll pick with ADAK is like, if there's this document floating around, just have it on your site. Like, just have it. Like, I unless it's displaying any like sensitive information, like in terms of like personal information, like if they're suspended, just say that, publish that list.
Well, maybe it's because it's a provisional suspension, right? Maybe it's because it's provisional and that the trial was still pending, right? And so that's where I get a little like the legalities of it and the internal policies. I'm like, okay, I can kind of get it, but then again, I still don't know where that list came from. Like, I still have no idea where it came from, and that's why we didn't report it. That's why I didn't release it at all. So it's somewhere out there. I don't know where someone got it, but it aligns with what we've seen so far. So frustrating, disappointing. Again, I'm willing to kind of give any and all athletes a hey, let's kind of wait and see what happens. But a whereabouts failure is not great. It's just there's no way to look at that and be like, no, everything's gonna be okay. Like there's legitimate concern to be had.
And to be clear on what a whereabouts failure is for those that, again, if you're listening to this podcast, I assume you know, but just to say, basically what the whereabouts failure is you have to report where you're going to be at certain times as a certain level of athlete, so that you can come and be tested. And if you basically aren't where you're saying you're supposed to be at those times and they come and test you, and usually it takes multiple of these whereabouts failures to trigger a suspension. It usually has the feeling that you're hiding something, right? If you're basically not, if you're avoiding being tested. So again, it's not that she had a positive test, but it's never a great sign when it seems like you're ducking a drug test.
Yeah. It's 3 whereabouts failures. Well, it's underwater rules, right? World Athletic Doping
Right.
Agency, which ADAK follows. 3 whereabouts failures within a 12-month period can result in what is called a violation again. It's all provisional suspension. All concerning, and just generally speaking, though, when these kind of things happen, usually does not bode well. So we'll see.
And
I
it's
hope I'm wrong.
and I think, sadly, I think this is going to be something we're reporting on more and more in the
Yep.
future. Again,
Yeah.
higher quality of athletes, the stakes are higher. There's like, not that necessarily there's more people using performance enhancing drugs now than there was before, but they're being tested more often because they're running so much faster and on a more national or international stage than just the NCAA stage that we've seen athletes at in the past. So
And
certainly
just as
going to be
much money,
something.
just as
Yeah,
much money's
exactly.
on the table. So
Absolutely. And so we're going to see more of this. It's going to be something that the NCAA, that all these conferences are going to have to figure out how they're going to handle, because this is not going to be a one-off issue, unfortunately.
no, no, it is not. So all right, enough on that. A little bit more of a positive note. Let's go chat about something a bit lighter. We're going to do end of season awards, a classic. Now, what are these awards? Well, we have 5 different categories, one for men, one for women on each side. And we're going to go through the last indoor track season for NCAA and talk about who the best freshmen in the NCAA were. We're going to talk about who the most improved, the best distance coaches, the best performance, and the best all-around distance athletes, or just the best pure distance runners, period, 800 meters and up. So we'll go one by one. Our minimum nominee criteria is 4. Our maximum is 9. So we try not to have more. Try not to have double digit nominees for each category, but we try to have at least 4. It's almost always 6, 7, 8 for a lot of these nominees lists. And then a bunch of our writers have voted for them, and then we'll you can check on the site or for our final results there. Ben, of course, is a voter. I myself am a voter. There's about 6 of us that are voting this season. So, Ben, go ahead. Why don't you just list off the criteria beforehand and then go ahead and list off the athletes in the respective schools who were nominated for Best Freshman Award?
Yeah. So for the wait, sorry, are you saying the criteria for the best freshman award?
Yes, criteria for Best Freshman.
So yes. So basically, it's any athletes who are true freshmen. International athletes can be freshmen if they're coming in and this is their first year, that they're going to have 4 full seasons of eligibility. So it can't. This isn't the red shirt freshman of the year award. This is, hey, you're a true freshman in your first available season running on the indoor track. This was your first opportunity to run, and you did run. This qualifies you as the best freshman of the year. And on the men's side, the nominees we have are, oh man, I really got to get this name down because I'm going to be saying a lot over the next couple of years. Koitatoi Kadali of Oregon.
Sure.
Tyler Matthews of BYU. Collins Kiprotich of New Mexico. Ishmael Kipkurui of New Mexico. Evans Kurui of Washington State. And Shadrach Kiptu of Oklahoma. This one felt like a fairly straightforward one, but I think there were a couple good options in this list, and really out of Albuquerque specifically.
There were, yeah, and I think it's fair to say that Ishmael Kipkuri was the favorite. And I think it makes sense. He ran 13:11 for 5,000 meters, at least in altitude converted 13:11. Was 7th over 5,000 meters at the indoor national meet, 7:43K. At that point, it's a little too challenging to overcome. But you other look at guys like Kadali of Oregon, who ran 1:46, was excellent at the Big Ten championships. You look at Collins Kiprotich, the other New Mexico runner, 3:53 altitude conversion, qualified for the national meet. There was a really good group. Like Kipkuri is probably the guy who I'll vote for and you voted for, but at the same time, it's not like a night and day difference like it has been over these last couple seasons.
No, and Evans Karui is certainly another name that I think deserves recognition there. Honestly, didn't have that different of a season than
Yep.
Ishmael Kipkurui. I mean, I think Kipkurui finished 3 places ahead of him in the 5K at Nationals. Ran, I think, about 5 or so seconds faster than him this indoor season. So both of these guys really, really good seasons. We didn't have the runaway winner like we've had in years past, where you have like a Pamela Kaz guy who was a national title contender in her first season. We didn't have that, but we did have a solid group of guys that came in and immediately were All-American contenders.
Yeah, yeah, these guys were all really solid. Like I think this was probably I don't know if it's necessarily the deepest, but it's a group that I feel like extremely confident in, especially moving forward. Like I feel like I can really point to a lot. Like I think Tyler Matthews is going to be a multi-time All-American from BYU. I think he's going to be a multi-time All-American by the time he finishes his NCAA career. I think by
Yep.
the time Kadali gets more experience, he's going to be a national champion. I
Mm-hmm.
think Kip Rotich is going to be a 3-season All-American. When all is said and done, I like all these guys. I see realistic avenues for them to being really really good. If it wasn't for Kip Curie, who would be the second guy on your list?
I think for me, it's Evans Karui. I think
Mhm.
just a very similar uh, resume. I think Kip Rotich also is up there for me. I honestly think Matthews is probably the underrated guy here. Just what he did as part of that BYU DMR. Now he didn't have the individual glory that some of these other guys did, but the fact that he helped BYU run as well as they did and surprised us, a lot of us, in that DMR, I think was a big role. He had a big role to play in an NCAA final that a lot of these other guys could not say.
Yeah, yeah. I'm struggling to figure out who I would want. I really want to say Kadali as my second, but I don't know if I can. I think I would go Kip Rotich, 353 conversion, 746 3K national meet qualifier. Like now, granted, a lot of these guys were national meet qualifiers, but
Yep.
still, um, yeah, I guess you could. I guess Karui will probably not be a bad option, but um, yeah, it's tough. It's tough. This was not as deep of a class, but a complete class. I think is the best way to put it.
And Kadali's probably the one that you would almost bet on having the best career out of
Yeah,
all of these guys, which I
yeah,
think
yeah.
is the hard part, right? Because he's run 142, and we didn't quite see that level out of him this indoor season, but we do expect to see him a lot closer to that area over the next year or so. So yeah, I think he'll be certainly one to watch. On the women's side, we had Pamela Kazgai of New Mexico, Tessa Buswell of BYU, Janet Kemboy Amino of Kentucky, Ali Ince of Oregon, Rachel Forsyth, Michigan State, and Marriott Jepnagenich of New Mexico. So this one felt more like a runaway one in my mind, but this is an interesting group of athletes that kind of run the gamut across different events and just come in from different backgrounds. And I think this is almost like we're talking about the men, how hey these guys could put together something really special over the next couple of years. I think you could say the same thing about a lot of these women, that this is just the beginning, that we're going to see huge improvements for them over the next couple of years.
I agree. So I think Pamela Kosky pretty much the clear favorite here. 15 flat, 844 3K. I mean, she was third in the 5K at the national meet. Would have probably gotten third again in the 3K
Yep.
had she not fallen. I mean, it's a pretty clear choice of her. But outside of her, who would have been the next name that you had here as your next best option? Because I'm stuck between like two or three names here.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Oh man. I
It's
don't.
tough.
Yeah, I think maybe Ali Ince or Rachel Forsyth. I
Yeah,
I, I
but
like.
which one?
Oh, I think ints. I think I'll go with even. I think running 432 and 430, like that's that I think is probably a little bit better than Forsyth's 853 and 434. I
Yeah,
don't love answering this question though.
I know. I know. I'll take ints as well, but man, you could have. I was really would have said. I mean, it would have been a toss up if in a world where Cosby didn't exist. I'd
Yeah.
say Forsyth and ints were probably neck and neck, and I wouldn't argue with anyone who wanted to vote for Forsyth. I think it's tight. I think ints kind of wasn't quite as potent at the tail end of the indoor track
Yes.
season as maybe she was, as maybe like Forsyth was. Although Forsyth was, her best race came in mid-February. Big Tens was a little it was good. It was fun. It wasn't amazing. So that's just inexperience though. Yeah, I a little conflicted, but did this group of nominees feel thin to you?
Yes, very, very much so. And that's why I kind of led off with this feels like a group that is just getting started, right? This feels like the traditional freshman of the year award list that we had maybe 5 years ago, where I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, yeah, this what we're looking for in this list is a group of men or women that showed flashes that they could be all Americans in the future. And nowadays it's been, oh no, you were an all American, so you are going to get the freshman of the year award, or you were a national title contender, you're going to win the award. This felt like a little bit of a throwback list where it's like, all right, we're gonna these are some names to keep an eye on over the next year or two.
I'm just gonna put this out there. I don't know if we actually got Brenda Jepchirchir of Auburn, who ran 15:33. I'm gonna say that she probably deserves to be in there. So if you're listening to
Yeah, I
this
think so.
and you're like, hey, wait, where's Brenda? We'll probably put Brenda Chipchurcher in there. She probably deserves to be listed, despite some inconsistencies. But um, otherwise, I think this is a pretty clean cut, straightforward. Let's actually real quick, just like a one sentence answers here. What is the ceiling for each of these women? And I'm going to start with Pamela Koski. One sentence. What's her ceiling for her NCAA career?
Multi-time national title winner.
Tessa Buswell, BYU. She ran 203.
Uh,
Altitude converted.
yeah, I'll say All American.
Multi-time All-American.
That I'm not quite ready to
Over
get.
under 2.5 All-American honors.
Are we including DMRs?
No.
Then under. I'll go under.
Okay. Janet Chip Kimboy Amino.
I think multi-time All-American.
I have no idea about her. I
Yeah, this
really
one,
don't.
she's probably the hardest one on the list to talk about.
Allianz.
Potentially Oregon's next true mile title contender.
How fast does she run in her career, NCAA career? What's her
Oh
ceiling? What's
man,
her ceiling
you
for a
got
mile runner?
like plus some you got to add like inflation on these times
I know.
nowadays. So it's like, all right, if I would have said she would have run 4:29 3 years ago, what does that mean nowadays?
I think that means like 4:25.
23.
What's
I'll
that?
say 4:23.
Yeah, I was at 4:24. So
Yeah.
not far off. Rachel Forsyth.
I think I'm trying to think of a way of saying this in one sentence. Just a 3-season superstar.
From a value perspective, one of the most valuable
Yes.
3-season stars.
Yeah.
Like that. Marian Chipnagetich.
A key reason for New Mexico's continued success, an underrated reason for their success over the next couple of years.
And then Brenda Jepchirchir of Auburn.
I think one of the more intriguing talents to watch over the next year with a very high ceiling.
Very high ceiling. I agree. Her raw talent is so
Yes.
immense. She has to be more consistent and get it all together. But guess what? She's new to the NCAA. She's a rookie. She's from overseas. Once she gets comfortable, she's going to be a massive problem if she can get comfortable. So, all right, moving off of that, we're going to do most improved. This is one that you and I bark at each other about
Yeah.
all the time. But let's start most improved men We have Harrison Witt of Princeton, Laban Kempoy of Oklahoma State, Foster Malik of Boston U, Emmanuel Galdino of Iowa State, Cooper Kothra of Texas A&M, Colton Sands of North Carolina, Creed Thompson, BYU, Matthew Erickson of Oregon, and Kyle Reinheimer of Washington. This is one where I think we can, still unveil who we thought, who we took here. Just because I think the results from all of our writers were so close, the votes here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a loaded group. I feel like we say this about most improved every year, but normally you have a candidate that you're like, all right, they just improved. They went from no one knew you, and now you're on the national stage, right? And then you have a candidate, and that's usually I feel like who you lean towards, and then there's usually the candidate that I lean towards, which is someone who's good, been around for a while at this level, but takes a huge leap forward and now is like a title contender, a title favorite. And I feel like we got a lot of those different and a little bit of a mix of all those kind of candidates. Where I landed on was Foster Malik. I think he fits both of our criteria in a lot of ways, where he just kind of came out of nowhere, runs 3:53, and then not only that, finishes third in the mile final, which is the result that I think really cemented his case for me. Was that performance at the national meet, where it wasn't just a fluke that he ran 3:53. No, he got through prelims and then beat a lot of the best milers in the country when it mattered most.
I was really, really, really close to voting for Malik. In fact, I might still vote for him because I agree. I think you have the combination of just raw improvement, right? And then the national meet success, the clear maturity in terms of racing intangibles, I think is absolutely a reason why we should have him considered. His times 3:55 to 3:53 from one season to the next, like it's a 2-second drop. It's not like it's necessarily a monster drop. I went with Cooper Kothra of Texas A&M. I
One.
thought from a pure quantitative perspective, he made a massive leap. He was a 3:59 miler who dropped all the way down his PR to 3:54, which did not make the national meet this year, which is kind of like, I feel it's like I can't ding him for not making the national meet with a 3:54 mile PR. He validated himself throughout the season. He split 3:51 on the anchor leg of Texas A&M's DMR. He proved like, hey, not only am I legit, but with me on this relay, we are legit. And I really got to commend him for that. I think 350, like in my mind, I see 3:59 to 3:51, and I know splits aren't exactly the same, so maybe 3:53 if you want to call it. But I was impressed, and I think from where he started to where he is now, I like Cooper Kothra a lot.
Yeah, I was bouncing between him and I liked Harrison Witt's case a lot as well. I thought you could make an argument for Erickson. Obviously, didn't drop a ton of time, but from going from a nationally competitive name to a national title winner is not something that very many people do as well. So yeah, and Colton Sands was. I mean, again, just a really fun group of guys, and this is always the most fun award to talk about because you're just happy for everyone for just being on this list.
It is, yeah. You are very. That's a great way of putting it. You're just happy. You're like, it's my guy. It's like, you know him? Nope, don't know him at all. He's my guy. The Emmanuel Galdino part here, I think at the beginning of the season, the first half of the season, we've been like, hey, he's our most improved. Where did he in this hierarchy of names fall for you?
I think like mid pack in my mind. It was just the lack of national championship like races that I think ultimately dropped him down a tier. Like if he's running in the mile field and he makes it to the finals, I think that's a situation where, hey, yeah, you certainly are right in the mix to win the award. Whereas he took a nice step forward, but everybody on this list took a really nice step forward, so it was hard to place him above a lot of these guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't disagree. Yeah,
He was
Yeah,
just
I
so
don't
well
know.
rounded. He improved like the 800, the mile. He improved on a couple different levels, which a lot of these guys you didn't necessarily see, which
Yeah.
I think makes him compelling. But when you look at what these guys did on a more national stage, I think that's ultimately what
It
hurt.
was just like there was also the durability part, his ability to
Yeah,
double and to like run consistently and steadily improve, even if it was really, really small improvements from his first major double breakout, meet, right? And then going to the postseason and getting gold at the Big 12 championships. I'm just like, yeah, I know he didn't make the national meet, but man, that's another thing. You look at his results, 354, 147. Usually we're like, oh, that guy's qualifying, no problem.
yeah.
Like this isn't a conversation. And so I feel a little bad from that aspect. But um, who was the guy that you were just this season from start to finish the most surprised about? Not necessarily the most impressed by or deserving of this reward, but the most surprised by.
I think Harrison Witt. I
Yeah.
think just
Mm.
from beginning to end is the guy for me where he just exceeded expectations in pretty much every race he ran in until maybe the national meet. Whereas like it kind of expected him to be right up near the front because he had just blown the doors off of what we expected him to do every single race preceding that. I mean, to run 147, 219, 352, looked really good doing it, right? Like running 351 on the DMR anchor. Like he just did everything so well this season. And if you voted on this award before nationals, I think there's a very strong case he ends up winning it.
Yeah, I think from a most surprising perspective, I still think Cooper Cawthorn from like start to finish was the most
Sure.
surprising. Just in terms of like, hey, if you had said he was going to split 351, I'd be like, no. Um, Whereas I think the next guy though is like Colton Sands, who like had a good
Yeah.
cross country season. He was like really solid, but like I don't even think he was an All American on the grass. I could be wrong on that, but and then for him to run 739 and 1327, like that's it's so easy to overlook him, but 739 is a still a big deal even if 11 men
Yeah.
still ran it. So yeah, I would probably have said Kothra and then Sands, but at this point, tomato tomato. So
Absolutely. Let's move on to the women's side of the most improved award, and our nominees were as follows: Laura Pellicora of Portland, Gabriella Grissom of Miami, Florida, Annalise Batista of Arkansas, Kaylee Politza of Oklahoma State, and Lorena Rangel Beatrice of LSU, Vera Schorberg of Boston University, Mina Scatcherd, Princeton, Hannah Gapes, NC State, and Jaden Keeler of North Dakota. Another loaded and very deep field here. I
Ben, real
thought,
quick, real quick, Ben, if you don't mind, I just want to talk about the criteria real quick.
sure,
For those who for the criteria, it's evaluates nationally competitive distance talents who are not expected to make the leaps in fitness that they did this winter. Prior seasons are used as a comparison tool, a loose comparison tool when attempting to list nominees. Nominees for this award do not include true freshmen or athletes who were in their first season of NCAA competition, not necessarily indoor track. Sorry, go ahead, please go on.
yeah, I was just saying, I think this one, I think there was a lot of good potential winners here. I was surprised that it seemed to be consolidated around a name or two. I thought, I mean, Lorena Rangel Beatrice has been awesome before, but she went to a completely different level this year. Same with Laura Pellicora. Always been very good. Went to a completely different level. Then you had like Vera Schorberg, who had run well last outdoor season, but this was a completely different level. Jaden Keeler just coming out of the absolute woods to make the national meet for North Dakota. And then Mina Scatcherd, who was my pick, that just basically did everything well this year and then finishes second in the mile final. I think it was hard to ignore that second place finish, but you look at what everybody else did, and it is, I mean, a lot of compelling cases.
There are a lot of compelling cases. I'm not going to give away who I voted for, but I think it's fair to say that this probably came down to Jaden Keeler, came down to Mina Scatcherd, Vera Sojberg.
Yeah.
And you can maybe make an argument for Grissom. I don't know if we saw quite enough from her this season, just outside of the postseason, to really have a firm understanding of like what she's truly capable of. But yeah, I mean, Mina Scatcherd was good and talented, but she was not this national caliber star. She was someone who was probably the most speed based and refined based on the national stage. Beat Kaylee McCabe, ran 428, was a true stud. Like I said, Grissom really came on in the postseason, peaked perfectly, All American honor, super quick time. Gosh, who else? Jaden Keeler, really, she had run her. Did you? I don't know if you saw this yet. Did you read what her prior personal best in the 5K was before the season?
Yeah, that was crazy.
Her prior 5K personal best before the season was 16:48. She then ran 15:28 this winter. So quantitatively, strictly quantitatively speaking, she's the most improved, and it's not close, which is pretty impressive. But at the same time, she maybe didn't have the same national presence that Scatcherd did, right? Or maybe even Sojberg. Sojberg was probably the most consistently competitive at a national level compared to all these women who I've just spoken about. So you can maybe debate that with Scatcherd, but I think Sojberg is up there. So really tight group. I agree. I thought there was going to be a little bit more spread out than it was in the votes. But which of these, is it fair to say that Keeler was the most surprising name?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Just no, not on my radar whatsoever coming into this season, and for her to hold her own at the national meet too. I mean, it's not like she showed up and was just happy to be there. She finished 10th. She was 2 spots away from being first team All-American, which I think is a very strong achievement as well. And for Schoberg and Rangel Belchers, I think we underrated both of them a little bit because we're like, oh wow, this seems, I mean, like running 426, like 428. That seems pretty like, are they really that fast? And I at least, like, when I was thinking about like, hey, who am I expecting to be in the final? I had kind of been like, all right, they're going to be one of those athletes that are near the top of the performance list who don't make it to the finals.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to run as well as they both did in this national meet, I think is a testament to just how consistent of a season they've had.
Yeah, you and I were even like prior to the national meet, we're like, hey, those women in that 426 range, there's going to be multiple women who do not make
Yeah.
it out of the prelims, and like you kind of go through, and so many of them didn't, and I think it's very easy to get lost in the fact that Sojberg did, and that Rangel Beatrice did, and again, Rangel Beatrice 425 anchor split on the DMR the night before, right, which adds to the lore. Sojberg mile All-American, 8th place in the finals. So, I think it's important not to dismiss them just because of the extreme end of the spectrum of improvement that we saw from some of these other women.
Yep, absolutely. Let's move on and go to the best performance award on the men's side. And again, this isn't necessarily, hey, who put together the fastest race or who won the national title. This is about, hey, what did we think was the best performance of the year? What do we think stood out the most and was just, again, it could be like, hey, this was just an incredible back and forth battle. Was it an NCAA record? There, you could really vote on this in a lot of different ways. So the nominees for this: Ethan Strand runs NCAA record 3K, NCAA 3K record of 7:30 at Boston U. Ethan Strand runs NCAA mile record of 3:48 at Boston U. Gary Martin runs NCAA number 2 all-time mark of 3:48 at Milrose Games. Gary Martin splits 3:48 to defeat North Carolina and Ethan Strand for DMR national title. Aiden McCarthy runs NCAA number 3 all-time 800-meter mark of 145.19. Haptem Samuel runs NCAA number 3 D1 all-time 5K mark of 13:04. And Matthew Erickson upsets field to win NCAA 800 title. And Tanoto Mitsatsa runs NCAA 1K record of 2:16 at Penn State. Just so many all-time marks.
I may have. I think that was at Penn. I don't know if that was at Penn State.
At Penn. I think. Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
So,
but
FYI.
Yeah, just an incredible field. The fact that we're talking about multiple NCAA records, multiple runs under in the mile or 1600 under 350. This was a very difficult one to vote on. I think there's a couple that really stood out, and that it was hard to decide on between those.
I was wrong. It was Penn State. So
Okay.
whoops. Who did you vote for? Because this one was split enough where I don't mind giving away who we voted
Yeah, I voted for Ethan Strand's 3K. I thought that's the one. I think that's the enduring image that I'm going to have of this NCAA season is that 3K where you see the headline and think there's a typo that they did 0 instead of 9 or 0 instead of 8. Like the fact that it was 7:30 and very very close to seeing a sub 7:30 3K in the NCAA. The 348s were fast, don't get me wrong, but we both had said, hey, we expect the mile record to get broken this year. I don't think any of us expected to see that kind of 3K. And for Parker Wolf to be running 7:30 as well, I think makes it all the more cool of a performance that they went neck and neck, and Strand was able to edge out someone who I think been seen before that as clearly the superior all around runner compared to Strand. And for Strand to start out the season like that, I think that really just set the tone for the entire season.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have said the better all around runner, but I think the more dynamic runner for sure. So, well, I don't know. Maybe I take that back. I don't know. Maybe he was the better.
I think from a cross cut, like if you think about how we thought about Strand coming into this year, it was like, all right, yeah, he just had a good cross country season, was awesome. Obviously, wasn't anywhere near. He wasn't Parker Wolf, right? And Parker had been great and had run some fast miles. Was obviously great in the 3K, 5K, 10, at the longer distances. And it was like, all right, yeah, if you're gonna run Strand and Wolf in a mile, you would probably bet on Strand, but everything else you would expect Wolf to be better.
Yeah. So you know what? I take that back. Yeah. So you're probably right. Wolf was probably better all around. So I also went with a 7:30. I think the argument is really it comes down to the mile. Is it Strand's mile or Strand's 7:30? I did struggle on this, and I know this was by no means unanimous. Like just because we both voted 7:30, there's still 4 other writers who could have said nah. And so there's that. How between Strand and Strand's 3K record, Strand's mile record, how close was Tanoda Matsatsa's 2:16 1K record in comparison?
You see that one wasn't quite as high up there as it probably should have been.
You just don't like Tanoda, don't you?
No, I do. I'm the one who I think said he was clearly the 800 favorite.
Wow,
and
we all
I
said
was
that. Yeah,
betting on him to win. Like I don't know. The 1K doesn't do it for me. The same way that the mile and the 3K do for whatever reason. I mean, I think like what Gary Martin did running 348 as well. What Gary Martin did winning the DMR and splitting 348, to me, like that again, whether that's the better performance when you look at like the table, like the World Athletic tables, like 216 compared to a 348, I don't know, but like that kind of commanding performance in a race that really mattered, I thought was honestly a little more, even more impressive than the 216.
Fair enough. Okay, you know what? And I'm going to move off of that because I feel like I don't want to just keep drowning on about the same performances that we've probably already talked about 1.5 million times. But let's go to the women's side. Oregon's Solana Yildiz runs NCAA mile record of 4:23 at Boston U. Oregon's Wilma Nielsen wins the NCAA mile title. Stanford's Juliet Whitaker runs 1:59 for 800 meters at the Husky Classic. UNC's Michaela Page wins the NCAA 800 meter title wire to wire despite a near fall. Kaylee McCabe outkicks the field to win the NCAA 3K title. Doris Lemegal outkicks Lexi Halliday-Lauer to win the NCAA 5K title. Doris Lemegal runs the NCAA indoor 5K record of 14:52 at Boston U. And Riley Chamberlain splits 4:25 to give BYU a comeback DMR national title win. Go ahead. You and I had the same vote. And
really?
We did, and yet we both lost.
Yeah.
We did not have
Interesting.
anyone else. Let's not give away who did win or who everyone else voted for.
Right.
Who was the one that you and I did vote for? I was very close to voting for the other one, but who were the others?
I voted for Riley Chamberlain splits 425 to give BYU the comeback DMR victory. I thought that was like clearly to me the best race of the NCAA championships for her to come all the way back and just dominate really there at the end with a spectacular kick. I thought that was the most interesting race to watch. I think if you're talking about some of these other results, to me, like Doris Lemongol, I think her 1452 probably gets thrown under the radar a little bit too much just because we kind of expect her to do that. But I mean, it was still an NCAA record, very impressive performance. And then I think the NCAA championship performances, Michaela Page and Kayla McKay were both great, but I think they're just they're kind of normal NCAA title winning races in my mind. They didn't stand out in the same way that Chamberlain did.
So I voted for Chamberlain just like you, but you and I were the only ones to vote for Chamberlain. I think it comes down to 4 total races. I think it's Solana Yildiz's mile record. I think it's Michaela Page's 800-meter title win, given everything that happened in that
Yeah,
race.
yeah.
I think it's Doris Lemongol's indoor 5K record of 1452, and I think it's Riley Chamberlain.
Yeah.
Um, those are the 4. I struggled. I think it's. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think of those 4, I think Solana Yildiz running 4:23 in the mile is the 4th most impressive,
Yeah.
which is
I agree.
insane to me.
Yeah,
It
I
is
didn't even
insane.
consider it. And it's a pretty wild thing to think about that. We didn't really consider a 423.
First one to ever break 4:24. It was like not even top 3. No.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
But when you're Doris Lemongol
funny.
and you break a Parker Volby record, it's hard. It's hard to argue against that.
How much of these are like come down to our expectations, right? If this was, oh, I'm trying to think of a runner that is not insulting to them that I'm saying it would be a surprise for them to run an NCAA record, but could still run an NCAA record. Like let's say like Kayla McCabe and had
Sure.
run like 1452. Do we think is that like suddenly the best performance of the year award?
I think it can be because I think the criteria that we've laid out for this this award is it can either be the most surprising, the most impressive, the most impactful, or the most
Right.
entertaining, right? And it really just gets kind of like, that kind of allows you to have a taste of like whatever
Yeah.
you want it to be. So if it's open enough for interpretation and someone runs that fast, yeah, I think you could I think she could win. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's like Lemon Goal almost gets docked. Is like it wasn't that surprising. 1452, like based off of everything she's done this year,
And yet
not
you could
not
argue
stunning.
that the most impressive performance, like in terms of how what happened, how it all broke down, was Paige almost falling and still
Yeah,
going wire to wire. The
yep,
counter argument to that is, okay, but she didn't have to face Hunter. She didn't have to
yeah,
face Whitaker. She didn't have to face even Pellicoro, right? She didn't have to face Sanu Jallo. So I think that's maybe the only reason why. Well, not the only reason, but there's a lot of other reasons. I think you and I chose Chamberlain, and I'm biased. I think we're correct, but everyone can go find out who won. So
absolutely. Let's move on to the best distance coach award on the men's side. We had Jerry Schumacher of Oregon, Chris Miltenberg, North Carolina, Mike Smith, Northern Arizona, John Gondak of Penn State, Andy Powell of Washington, Marcus O'Sullivan, Villanova, Chris Bucknam, Arkansas, Dave Smith, Oklahoma State, and Darren Gosson of New Mexico. There wasn't. I felt like this on the men's side with the coach. There wasn't anybody that really like ran away with this award. Now I still felt pretty strongly about who I voted for, but I think this was a pretty tight vote or tight. It was in my mind at least a pretty tight decision.
um, I think it was tight. I also still think it was. fairly clear, though.
Like, I think Darren Gosson has a pretty good argument for it.
I do think so
And
too.
I
Yeah.
don't think, like, he didn't get any votes, but, like, I think there's a world where it's okay if he would have, like, gotten a couple votes. Like, I think
Yeah.
with the development of, like, the non-Haptem Samuel guys, like, and you obviously had a national title contender in there, plus you had other guys that really took a nice step up and across multiple different events. Like, I thought he put together a very, very strong case.
I don't disagree. If there was, there's 6 votes of us this season,
Yeah.
and of the 6, if he had gotten 2, I would have been
Right.
like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Same thing with Jerry Schumacher.
Yeah.
Like I think the depth that we saw in those middle distance events, and really just all around, like Connor Burns finally came around to being kind of a nationally competitive name. Evan Bishop dipped under 4, and then you had Thomas Palfrey under 4, and Erickson went the title, and Cook splits
Beer
351 on
bomb
the
looked
anchor leg.
good.
Beerbaum was the 352 miler qualified, and like you just go down the line, Kadali and whatever. You just keep going. I keep James Harding was great this season. Like
Yeah.
the depth of this group was so extensive. And so if you really value depth, if you're someone who's like depth, I think is the
Sure.
biggest call. Jerry Schumacher, who we have been critical of, especially on the grass, I think he's made the argument of like, hey, I think they have an army now. I did not vote for Schumacher though.
I did not either. Do we want to say who we voted for, or should we leave it out?
Nah, you know what? Nah, let's not even say.
The
I do.
the other name that I think probably deserves a little consideration too is Marcus O'Sullivan of Villanova. I think what we saw, Leo Murphy was great as usual, but Marco Langen took a huge step forward, and then Dan Watke took the step forward that we expected him to be able to do at Oregon, but it was at Villanova where he really put it together this year.
Did we also mention Chris Miltenberg? I can't remember.
No, so yeah, Chris Miltenberg. I mean, it's Colton Sands, it's Parker Wolf, it's Ethan Strand. Like,
Yeah, it's not a
it's
lot
a
of depth, but I mean
pretty compelling argument.
I'm trying to remember like a top 3 that was. I mean, I think you have to go back to the Mike Smith NAU, probably
Yeah,
the Nur Young Bosley trio.
yeah,
Yeah, that's probably what it was, right?
yeah. I think so.
Yeah. So,
But I mean, these were a lot more NCAA records.
yeah, these guys were
for
better.
Miltenberg.
They were
Yeah,
better. Yeah, even like take away the times, like they were just better. So,
yeah.
and even Wolf wasn't at 100%, which is the
No,
craziest part.
yeah.
So,
Right.
all right, let's move off of those. We'll go to the women's side. On the women's side, we have Diljit Taylor of BYU, Shalane Flanagan of Oregon, Washington's Marisa Powell, Mitchell Baker of Georgetown, Houston Franks of LSU, Alex Gibby of Harvard, JJ Clark of Stanford, Mike Smith of Northern Arizona, and Ray Treacy of Providence. 2 questions. Who did this come down to? Which candidates? How many candidates were there? And who did it come down to in your mind? And then B, how upset are you that we had to kick off Lori Hennis of NC State?
Yeah, I didn't love that was the name that got kicked off. I thought what she did with Hartman and Gapes, I thought was extremely impressive. I think that the coaching job that she has done this year has flown on the radar, and you can make an argument that it's just as good as what she's done in years past when she was winning national titles with women that were a lot more established. I really like what she's done. For me, this was a list of 1. I didn't really consider that many other names. It was Diljit Taylor and Diljit Taylor for me. I think it was just what she did with multiple different women, the improvements we saw from Halliday Lowry and Riley Chamberlain. Megan Hunter didn't have her greatest national meet, but she was very good again. What they were able to do with that DMR to still get that win despite not having their best lineup, I thought just across the board it was very strong. I think Shalane Flanagan's probably the number 2 in my mind with what she was able to do with all those Oregon milers, but it was Taylor fairly convincingly for me.
Yeah, I'm not. I think it was Taylor. I agree, but I think if you're Oregon, you have an army of milers that
Yep.
were so good. And you have the best all-around miler in Wilma Nielsen. You have the most complete miler in Wilma Nielsen, and you have the fastest miler in Solana Yodes, right? Which is a lethal 1-2 punch. And then you go ahead and you have an NCAA, the official quote unquote record, NCAA
Right.
DMR, record in the DMR. You question like, hey, if that relay or was changed up with Mia Barnett or Ali Ince,
Right.
right? Does that look different? Like Mia Barnett ran 4:28 this year. She was also in the NCAA championships. It's that depth was so extensive. Rose, or is not Rose Pittman, Ella Nelson, I think it was,
Yeah.
who ran the 800-meter leg, splitting 203. There was 3K success. Nielsen was still great with over 800 meters 201. I think it's a little tighter. I agree. I still think Doji Taylor was the more complete, and I think the best part is that this isn't even her best season. Like I thought she actually
No.
was better in the past, which is insane. But outside of those two, who was like your number three?
This one was tough. I
I'd
think
say it.
either Houston Franks or Alex Gibby.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wait, go explain to me why on this one.
I liked what we saw from Houston Franks. Again, Michaela Rose clearly never had her fastball this year, and I think was still very much in contention. I liked what we saw out of Lorena Rangel Beatrice. She was awesome. That the DMR was great. I think, and as far as exceeding expectations, I think it's hard to argue that LSU wasn't the team that exceeded our expectations more than any other distance program. Alex Gibby, between Bosung and Gory Aaron, I thought was very, very strong as well. And honestly, like the rest of this list doesn't move me that much. Like Ray Tracy, like I think Providence underperformed overall. Like I think Alex Millard was good, and maybe better than expected, but I didn't love what I saw out of Flockhart and May. Mike Smith with NAU, I think Congdon was good and Carlson were good, but certainly not his best season. Mitchell Baker with Georgetown, I think was like you had what's the transfer from Stanford?
Jinx?
Why am
Was
I
it
forgetting?
Jinx?
Yeah, she was awesome. She exceeded expectations. Riggins was about as expected, and Scrimger probably a little bit not quite the season we maybe envisioned. And then Washington, I think Matug and Forrester were great,
Yep.
but it wasn't like those were super talented names already coming into it. And so I think there's a little bit of like expectation bias coming in to a little of this for me, but I just didn't love a lot of these other nominees.
I thought Mike Smith did a phenomenal job. I thought he did a really, really nice job. You have a 427 miler, and Maggie Congdon gets third at the national meet. Alex Carlson runs a converted 427. And if you didn't believe her converted 427, she runs 429 at the Husky Classic. That same Husky Classic race, Nikita Moore, 433. Ava Mitchell, 435. Agnes Batique, 438. Allie Upshaw, 438. Allie Burns, 439. So there's depth to go along with the firepower. Stearns has the best season of her life. You could even argue that it rivals her cross country campaign. 841 3K. Carrie Balaga, 852. Carlson, 853. Churchill, 859. McTeague, 859. By the way, Churchill ran a converted 431 mile. That's not even shown on there. 5,000 meters, Stearns ran 1508, and Upshaw ran 1527. This was so good. The top end was there. The depth was there. If you didn't like the conversions, and there was sea level stuff to back it up. I think this is actually a very, very, very close argument with Taylor and with Flanagan. I think Mike Smith had a real argument here.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Stearns certainly showed what she had shown like on the track, what she had shown on the grass, which I think is this is always kind of what we would have expected from someone who can finish top 5 in cross country, right? And I think for Congdon, I think we'd seen these flashes in the 1500 meter. I was pretty high on her already, but yeah, you're right. Just the overall depth, I think, is a something that elevates him probably a lot above a lot of these other coaches.
I agree. Let's move on to MVP. The nominees for the men are Ethan Strand of North Carolina, Gary Martin of Virginia, Matthew Erickson of Oregon, Cal Poly's Aiden McCarthy, Tanoda Matsatsa of Georgetown, Happen Samuel of New Mexico, Brian Musau of Oklahoma State, and Abel Tefra of Georgetown, along with Nathan Green of Washington. Pretty straightforward. Nathan Green, 2 NCAA records. I don't really think we need to go into this.
Ethan Strand, you mean?
What's that?
I think you said. Did you say Nathan? I thought you said Nathan Green.
Oh, did I? I might have said that. I don't know. Now I have to go back and check the tape. Whoops. But yeah, no, Ethan Strand. I may, now that I think about it, I may have said Nathan Green. I don't know. But Ethan Strand, I don't think there's much to talk about here. We initially put Marco Langone on here from just like a value perspective, thought he had an argument. Is there any candidate upon looking back that you look at who we have that you're like, I would take Marco Langone over these guys? You don't even say
I don't. No, I don't think so. No, I think he was very deservedly the next guy up. I think it was hard because he didn't reach the heights that any of these guys on this list reached, whether it was from a time perspective, whether it was from an NCAA performance perspective, but he just kind of combined everything. He was just so good at multiple different events throughout the season and at the national meet that he had a solid argument. It's just hard to say you would have put him over anybody else on this list.
Gary Martin, Ethan Strand are in a tier completely of their own.
Yes.
How many men make up the next best tier, and who are those men? Of these nominees?
Man. It's probably... Oh, man, this is tough. I would say it's Samuel, Green, and that's probably maybe Matsatsa too.
I think you can't have that second tier without Tefra. Because the Tefra also ran 2:17 in the 1K.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I hear you. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's a third tier that's Musau, McCarthy, and Erickson is kind of there's probably 3 different tiers there.
I'm moving us off of that, going to the women's side here. And we'll wrap it all up with Doris Lemengol. By the way, the criteria for this must have run attached at least once this season. Voters can choose to vote for the best distance runner or the most valuable distance runner from the season, which is not always the same. On the women's side, we have Doris Lemengol of Alabama, Lexi Halliday Lowry of BYU, Michaela Page of North Carolina, Wilma Nielsen of Oregon, Kelly McCabe of West Virginia, Grace Hartman, NC State, Riley Chamberlain, BYU, and Salon Ayildiz of Oregon. I think this is some people are going to. I think the obvious answer is Doris Lemengol. Spoiler: she does win. Spoiler again: she does not win unanimously. Who, in your mind, and I won't even say who the other person was that voted for her, but you and I both voted for Doris. Someone else voted for someone else. Who would you have guessed before, as you're listening to this podcast, not seeing the results? Who would you have guessed that other candidate being?
Yeah, I didn't even see this, so yeah, I truly am guessing. I mean, maybe Lexi Halliday Lowry. Just you get 2 top 3 finishes and was just very influential for your team in a lot of different ways throughout the season. I think there's probably an argument for that for her, or Wilma Nielsen, I think would be the other one.
Interesting. You're right on one of them.
Okay.
I'll
just scroll down and take a look real quick.
It's really, literally just scroll down and you'll see it. But but
okay,
yeah.
I that makes sense. I don't agree with it, but I can see how that argument could be made.
I don't know if I even have a question for this here, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't. This one felt pretty straightforward. I think Hartman being on this nominee list is a great achievement for her. I think this is a great sign for her and just shows what kind of consistent dominant season she's had. And
Real quick.
then everybody else I think has been on the fringes of this list before, and it's like Kaylee McCabe, I think Michaela Page. This is very much based off of her NCAA performance. Ayilda's on the basis of her collegiate record. I think this was one that wasn't the most loaded group of most valuable nominees that we've seen in years past.
Did Juliet Whitaker and or Laura Pellicaro get robbed?
I think Whitaker maybe a little bit, but she didn't have the greatest season. So it's hard to say that, like, if she had run like 157 or 158 or run like 159 2 or 3 times, then I think it's like, okay, yeah, you put her in despite not making finals.
Couldn't you have argued that Pellicaro had a better season than Whitaker?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was kind of leading up into. It was like,
Okay.
Pellicaro probably had, and so it's like Whitaker, you could say, hey, she just the name recognition alone, like she could have been on the list, but she just didn't have that good of a season. Pellicaro had a better season, but doesn't have the track record of performing like Whitaker does on the national level. So it's not as if like, oh, this felt like a huge fluke like it was for Whitaker. This felt like, oh, there's just
and she didn't perform well on. Yeah, she didn't perform well on the national stage. So
exactly.
Do you remember at the beginning of the season where I said, should Laura Pellicaro focus to go all in on the 3K so that she could avoid the prelims? Versus, and you said no, we'll let her go after the prelims.
Yeah.
Do you regret saying that?
Definitely would have been the better decision to probably do that in retrospect.
Yeah. Well, all right, Ben, that is it. That's all we got. That was a longer episode, but guess what? It was a productive episode. And for next week, we should have Raleigh relay chat discussions. We're going to have, I think Donnie's going to be there, video interviews. So go check that out. Get some clips on the IG page. In the meantime, go leave us a follow, rating, review. Go to the Spotify, go to Apple, go to our page. It's these stars at the top of Spotify, at the bottom of the page for Apple, 5 stars. If you want to leave a comment, that would be phenomenal. Thank you. Subscribe on YouTube. There's so much stuff there. So much stuff. And of course, a lot of great content coming up. I'll give a little spoiler to those who are still listening at the very tail end of the episode. We're not doing track rankings anymore. We're not doing outdoor track rankings anymore. We're going to experiment. Do something a little different. I'm not explaining what that is yet, but we're replacing outdoor track distance rankings with something a little different. Ben already knows. And so we're going to spice it up and see what happens, but more to come on that in the coming weeks.
Yeah, without giving away anything, I feel like I'm going to just be very interested to watch these things, and I feel like I'm going to be like the ombudsman of these of like what we're doing from now on. I'll be calling people out on certain things. Yeah,
it's got the nice thing is that like there's no hiding
exactly.
There's no hiding in our project. It's either like you either have your opinion and your feeling and it's going to be shown or it's not. And so I'm still deciding whether or not we can make like a full dedicated page to it, but yeah, it's gonna be fun. So okay, Ben, on that note, that is all I've got.
All right, well, until next week, Garrett, I'll talk to you.